Ethan, honey, I found it, I exclaimed, my heart racing as I burst through the front door. The scent of lasagna wafted from the kitchen, but my excitement overshadowed my hunger. The perfect plot of land for our dream home. Ethan emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. That's great, Liv. Where is it? I pulled out my phone, fingers fumbling as I scrolled through the photos. It's just outside the city limits. You know that area near Willow Creek? It's got this gorgeous view of the mountains, and there's even a little stream running through the back of the property. As I rambled on, describing every detail of our future paradise, I couldn't help but notice Ethan's enthusiasm waning. His responses became shorter, his nods less frequent. Something was off. What's wrong? I asked, lowering my phone. Don't you like it? Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. It sounds beautiful. Liv, it's just, isn't it a bit far from everything? I frowned. It's only a 30-minute drive from the city. We've talked about wanting some space, remember? I know. It's just... He trailed off, avoiding my gaze. Before I could press further, the doorbell rang. Ethan seemed almost relieved as he went to answer it. Martha, I heard him exclaim. Great. Just what I needed, my mother-in-law dropping by unannounced. Again. Hello, darling, Martha cooed, enveloping Ethan in a hug that lasted a beat too long. She breezed past me with barely a nod. I brought dessert. I hope you don't mind me joining you for dinner. I bit back a retort. Of course, we minded. This was supposed to be our night to discuss our future home, but Ethan, ever the dutiful son, was already ushering her into the dining room. As we sat down to eat, I tried to steer the conversation back to our house plans. Martha, we were just discussing some potential locations for our new home. What do you think about the Willow Creek area? Martha's fork clattered against her plate. Willow Creek? But that's so far away. Ethan, surely you're not considering moving that far from me? I watched Ethan carefully, waiting for him to defend our plans. Instead, he mumbled something about just exploring options and quickly changed the subject. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of Martha's chatter and my growing unease. As I cleared the plates, I overheard Martha in the living room, her voice low but clear. Ethan, darling, you know I worry about you living so far away. What if something happened to me? Who would take care of me? I leaned closer to the doorway, straining to hear Ethan's response. Don't worry, Mom. I won't move far from you. I promise. The plate I was holding slipped from my fingers, shattering on the kitchen floor. Ethan and Martha rushed in, concern etched on their faces. Olivia, are you all right? Ethan asked, reaching for the broom. I stood there, frozen, as the realization washed over me. All our talks, all our plans, had they meant nothing to him? Was I the only one who had been dreaming of our future together? I'm fine, I managed to choke out. Just a little clumsy. As I bent to help clean up the mess, I caught Martha's triumphant smirk. In that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about a house. This was about control, about who would shape our future. And right now I was losing. I straightened up, meeting Ethan's gaze. We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, alone. The tension in the room was palpable. Martha's smirk faded, replaced by a look of concern. Ethan nodded, his face a mixture of guilt and apprehension. As Martha gathered her things to leave, I steeled myself for the conversation ahead. One thing was clear. Our dream home was about to become a battlefield. The moment Martha's car pulled out of our driveway, I whirled to face Ethan. What the hell was that about? I demanded, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. Ethan's shoulders slumped. Liv, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been lying to me this whole time? That all our plans for our dream home were just a fantasy? He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. It's not like that, he pleaded. I do want a home with you. I can't leave my mom alone. I laughed bitterly. Alone? Martha's more involved in our lives than some married couples I know. When were you planning on telling me that moving away was never an option? Ethan's face crumpled. I didn't know how. I was afraid you'd react like this. Like what? Like a wife who just found out her husband's been deceiving her? We stood in tense silence, the shattered plate on the floor a fitting metaphor for our broken dreams. Finally, Ethan spoke. Look, we can still build our house. We'll just find a place closer to Mom, maybe within a 10-minute drive. I felt my heart sink. This wasn't a compromise. It was a surrender. And what about my dreams, Ethan? What about the life we planned together? We can still have that life, he insisted, just with Mom nearby. I closed my eyes, trying to quell the storm of emotions raging inside me. When I opened them, I saw Ethan watching me anxiously, like a child waiting to be forgiven. Fine, I said, my voice hollow. We'll look for places closer to your mother. Relief washed over Ethan's face. He moved to hug me, but I stepped back. I'm going to bed, I muttered, leaving him standing alone in the kitchen. As I lay in bed that night, sleep eluding me, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just lost something precious. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about trust, about the future we'd planned together. And for the first time since we'd gotten married, I wondered if Ethan and I wanted the same things after all. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. Ethan was in the kitchen, a forced cheerfulness in his voice as he greeted me. Morning, Liv. I made breakfast. I nodded, accepting the peace offering for what it was. As we ate in uncomfortable silence, Ethan cleared his throat. So I was thinking we could start looking at properties this weekend. There's a nice development about 5 miles from Mom's place. I set down my fork, appetite gone. 5 miles? Ethan, that's practically next door. He had the grace to look sheepish. Well, it would make it easier for her to visit, and for us to check on her. Check on her? I repeated incredulously. Your mother is healthier than both of us combined. She doesn't need checking on. Ethan's jaw tightened. She's getting older, Liv. We need to be there for her. And what about being there for each other, for our marriage? Before Ethan could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me apologetically. It's Mom. She wants to know if we can come over for dinner tonight to discuss house plans. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. You've got to be kidding me. Liv, please, she's just trying to help. Help or control? I snapped. You know what? Go ahead. Have dinner with your mother. Plan our entire future with her. I'm sure you two will be very happy together. I stormed out of the kitchen, ignoring Ethan's calls. As I slammed our bedroom door shut, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked tired, angry, and most of all, lost. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about the rest of my life. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if Ethan would be part of it. I never thought I'd be spending my Saturday afternoon house hunting with my mother-in-law, but here I was, trapped in the back seat of Martha's sedan as she chattered away about the perfect neighborhoods we simply must consider. Ethan sat in the passenger seat, nodding along like an obedient puppy. Oh, and there's this lovely development just 2 streets over from me, Martha gushed. Wouldn't that be convenient? I bit my tongue, reminding myself that I was trying to compromise. Actually, Martha, I was thinking we could look at that new community near Willow Creek. It's still only a 20-minute drive from you. Martha's eyes narrowed in the rearview mirror. 20 minutes? But what if there's an emergency? Mom, we've talked about this, Ethan said softly. Willow Creek isn't that far. I felt a glimmer of hope. Was Ethan finally standing up to his mother? But Martha wasn't done. Well, I suppose we could look, but I really think you should consider something closer. After all, when you have children, you'll need me nearby to help. The car swerved slightly as Ethan's head snapped towards his mother. Children? Mom, we haven't even decided if we want kids yet. Martha waved her hand dismissively. Oh, nonsense. Of course you'll have children. I won't be denied grandchildren, Ethan. I felt my blood boiling. Martha, that's not really your decision to make. She glanced back at me, her smile tight. Of course not, dear. I'm just saying what's best for the family. The rest of the drive passed in tense silence. When we finally arrived at the first property, I practically leaped out of the car, desperate for fresh air. As we toured the house, Martha's domineering presence became impossible to ignore. She critiqued everything from the kitchen layout to the color of the bathroom tiles. This simply won't do, she declared. The master bedroom is much too small for a nursery to be attached. I exchanged a panicked look with Ethan, but he just shrugged helplessly. By the third house, I was at my wit's end. Martha had vetoed every property for increasingly ridiculous reasons, all while Ethan stood by silently. Well, Martha announced as we left the last house, I think it's clear none of these will work. But don't worry. I have the perfect solution. Ethan perked up. You do? Martha beamed. Of course, why don't you just buy my house? I can move into the guest house in the back, and you'll have plenty of room to start your family. It's perfect. I felt the blood drain from my face. Martha, that's very generous, but it's brilliant, Ethan exclaimed. Mom, are you sure? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan, can I talk to you for a moment? Alone? I dragged him away from Martha's triumphant smile. Have you lost your mind? I hissed. We can't live in your mother's house. Ethan looked bewildered. Why not? It solves all our problems. All our problems? Ethan, it creates a whole new set of problems. We'd be living under your mother's roof, playing by her rules. What about our dreams, our independence? He had the audacity to look hurt. I thought you were trying to compromise. Compromise? I sputtered. This isn't a compromise. It's a complete surrender. Before Ethan could respond, Martha's voice rang out. Everything okay over there, dears? I was thinking we could go back to my place and start planning the renovations. I have some wonderful ideas for the nursery. I watched as Ethan's face lit up at his mother's words, and in that moment, I saw our future unfold before my eyes. A life spent in Martha's shadow, our every decision scrutinized and controlled by her domineering presence. As we drove back to Martha's house, our potential future home, I felt a cold realization settle in my chest. This wasn't just about a house anymore. This was about the life I wanted, the marriage I thought I had, and the future I was rapidly losing control of. I looked at Ethan, chatting animatedly with his mother about paint colors and furniture arrangements, and wondered if he even noticed I was there, or if he cared. Weeks had passed since our disastrous house hunting expedition with Martha, and the tension in our home was thick enough to cut with a knife. Ethan and I barely spoke, tiptoeing around each other like strangers. The dream house that was supposed to bring us closer had become a wedge driving us apart. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table poring over house plans, still desperately clinging to the hope of finding a compromise, the doorbell rang. My stomach dropped. I knew who it was before I even opened the door. Olivia, dear, Martha chirped, breezing past me into the house. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I forced a smile. Not at all, Martha. What brings you by? She waved a folder in the air. I've been working on some ideas for the new house. I think you'll love them. Before I could protest, she had spread the papers across the table, covering my carefully crafted plans. My jaw clenched as I saw what she'd done. These weren't just ideas. They were complete architectural drawings. Martha, I began, trying to keep my voice level. We appreciate your input, but Ethan and I haven't even decided on a location yet. She patted my hand condescendingly. Oh, don't worry about that. I've taken care of everything. I've put a down payment on that lovely lot next door to me. Surprise! I felt the blood drain from my face. What? Isn't it wonderful? Martha beamed. Now we can be one big happy family. The front door opened and Ethan walked in. Hey, what's going on? He asked, taking in the scene. Martha rushed to him, enveloping him in a hug. Oh, Ethan, I was just telling Olivia about our new home. Isn't it exciting? I watched Ethan's face, waiting for him to set his mother straight. But to my horror, a smile spread across his face. Mom, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Something inside me snapped. Are you kidding me? I exploded. Ethan, how can you be okay with this? This is our home, our future. We're supposed to decide these things together. Ethan's smile faltered. Liv, come on, Mom's just trying to help. Help, I laughed bitterly. This isn't help. It's a hostile takeover of our lives. Martha gasped dramatically. Olivia, how can you say such things? I'm only thinking of what's best for my family. Your family? I spat. What about our family, Ethan? What about the life we plan together? Ethan looked torn, his eyes darting between his mother and me. Liv, please, we can make this work. It'll be great, you'll see. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. No, Ethan, this isn't what I want. This isn't the life I signed up for. Martha stepped forward, her voice sickly sweet. Now, Olivia, don't be dramatic. Once we're all settled in the new house, you'll see how wonderful it can be. And just think, when the babies come. Babies, I interrupted. Martha, we've told you we're not even sure if we want children yet. Martha waved her hand dismissively. Nonsense. Every woman wants children, and you're not getting any younger, dear. I felt like I was suffocating. This woman was planning out my entire life without my consent, and Ethan was letting her. No, not just letting her. Encouraging her. I can't do this, I whispered, backing away from them both. I won't do this. Liv, wait. Ethan reached for me, but I jerked away. No, Ethan, I'm done waiting. I'm done compromising. I'm done being the third wheel in my own marriage. I grabbed my keys and purse, ignoring their protests as I headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, Martha called out, "Oh, and Olivia? I hope you don't mind, but I've decided to move in with you both once the house is built." It just makes sense, don't you think? I froze, my hand on the doorknob. In that moment, I realized I had a choice to make. I could stay and fight a losing battle against Martha's dominance and Ethan's compliance, or I could walk away and reclaim control of my life. With a deep breath, I opened the door and stepped out into the night, leaving behind the suffocating future Martha had planned and the husband who couldn't or wouldn't stand up for me. I spent the night at my best friend Sarah's place, tossing and turning on her lumpy couch. By morning, I was exhausted but resolute. I needed to talk to Ethan, to make him understand how serious this situation had become. When I returned home, Ethan was pacing in the living room. He looked up as I entered, relief washing over his face. Liv, thank God, I was worried sick. I held up a hand to stop him. We need to talk, Ethan. Really talk. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, the distance between us feeling like a chasm. I took a deep breath and began, Ethan, this situation with your mother has gone too far. She's taking over our lives, and you're letting her. Ethan's brow furrowed. She's just trying to help, Liv. You know how much she cares about us. Cares about us? I echoed incredulously. Ethan, she put a down payment on a house without consulting us. She's planning to move in with us. How is that caring? He shifted uncomfortably. Mom's getting older. She needs us. And what about what we need? I countered. What about our marriage? Our future? Ethan's silence spoke volumes. I pressed on, my voice trembling. I can't live like this anymore, Ethan. I feel like I'm suffocating. Your mother is making all our decisions, and you're just letting it happen. He looked away, his jaw clenching. What do you want me to do, Liv? She's my mother. And I'm your wife, I exclaimed, tears stinging my eyes. Or have you forgotten that? Ethan reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Of course I haven't forgotten I love you, Liv. Then act like it, I pleaded. Stand up to your mother. Tell her we need our space. Tell her we'll make our own decisions about our home, our future, our family. He hesitated, and in that moment I saw our entire future laid out before us. A life of constant interference, of decisions made for us, of dreams slowly suffocated under Martha's overbearing presence. I don't know if I can do that, Liv, Ethan finally whispered. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood up, needing to put distance between us. Then I don't know if I can do this anymore, Ethan. His head snapped up, panic in his eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying that I need you to choose, me or your mother's control over our lives. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Liv, please, don't make me choose. There has to be a way we can all be happy. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. That's just it, Ethan. We can't all be happy. Not like this. Your mother will never be satisfied unless she's running our lives, and I'll never be happy living under her thumb. Just then, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me apologetically. It's Mom. She wants to know if we can come over to discuss the house plans. I felt something inside me break. Are you going to answer it? Ethan's finger hovered over the phone, indecision written all over his face. In that moment, I knew. I knew that no matter what he said, no matter what promises he made, nothing would change. Martha would always come first. You know what? I said, my voice eerily calm. Go ahead, go to your mother's, plan your future with her. I won't be a part of it anymore. Ethan's eyes widened. Liv, what are you saying? I walked to our bedroom, pulled out a suitcase, and started throwing clothes into it. I'm saying I'm done, Ethan. I can't do this anymore. I won't do this anymore. As I zipped up the suitcase, I heard Ethan's phone buzz again. Martha, no doubt, wondering why he hadn't responded yet. I looked at Ethan, standing frozen in the doorway, torn between his phone and me. You should answer that, I said softly. Wouldn't want to keep your mother waiting. With that, I grabbed my suitcase and walked out, leaving behind the man I thought I'd spend my life with and the future that now felt like a prison. As I closed the front door behind me, I heard Ethan's voice, small and defeated, answering his phone. Hi, Mom. I got into my car, hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I was taking back control of my life, starting now. I'd been staying at my parents' house for a week, ignoring Ethan's calls and messages. My mother hovered anxiously, while my father muttered about that spineless boy under his breath. I appreciated their support, but I knew I had to face Ethan eventually. When I finally agreed to meet him at a neutral coffee shop, my hands shook as I gripped my latte. Ethan looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. A part of me wanted to comfort him, but I steeled myself against the impulse. "Liv," he began, his voice hoarse. "I'm so sorry. Please, come home. We can work this out." I took a deep breath. "Ethan, I can't come home until we address the real issue here. Your mother's control over our lives has to stop." He nodded eagerly. I know. I've talked to Mom. She understands now. She won't interfere anymore." Hope flickered in my chest, but I squashed it down. I'd heard these promises before. What exactly did you tell her? Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I explained that we need our space, that we'll make our own decisions about the house. And," I pressed, "what about her moving in with us?" His hesitation told me everything. "Ethan," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "tell me the truth. Was that always the plan? For your mother to live with us?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "Liv, you have to understand. Mom's getting older. She needs us." The hope I'd been nurturing crumbled to dust. "So you lied to me. All this time you knew she'd be moving in with us." "I didn't lie," he protested weakly. "I just didn't tell you everything." I laughed bitterly. "That's the same thing, Ethan. You've been planning our future with your mother, not with me." "That's not true," he exclaimed. "I want a future with you, Liv. I love you." "Do you?" I challenged. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you love your mother more than you love me or our marriage." Ethan's face crumpled. "How can you say that? I'm trying to take care of both of you." "No, Ethan, you're trying to please your mother at the expense of our relationship, and I won't be a part of it anymore." His eyes widened in panic. "What are you saying?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to say. "I'm saying that unless you can stand up to your mother, unless you can put our marriage first, I don't see a future for us. Liv, please," he begged. "I'll do better. I'll talk to Mom again. We can find a compromise." I shook my head. "No more compromises, Ethan. I need you to choose. Me or your mother's control over our lives." The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of years of love and shared dreams. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't abandon my mother, Liv. She needs me." In that moment, I felt something inside me break. The last thread of hope I'd been clinging to snapped. "Then I guess we have our answer," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I stood up, gathering my purse. Ethan reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Liv, wait. Please don't go. I love you." I looked at him, this man I'd planned to spend my life with, and felt nothing but a deep, aching sadness. Sometimes love isn't enough, Ethan, not when it comes with conditions and lies. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I heard Ethan call my name one last time. But I didn't turn back. I couldn't, because I knew if I did, I might waver, and I couldn't afford to waver, not anymore. In my car, I sat for a long moment, tears streaming down my face. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Please, Liv, let's talk more. I can change." But as I stared at those words, I realized something. I didn't want Ethan to change. I wanted him to have been different all along. I wanted a partner who would have stood up for our relationship from the beginning, not someone who needed ultimatums to do the right thing. With shaking hands, I typed out a response. "I'm sorry, Ethan. It's too late. I'll be by tomorrow to pick up my things." As I hit send, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief wash over me. The future I'd imagined was gone, but in its place was the possibility of something new, something that was entirely mine. I started the car, wiping away my tears. It was time to start over, to build a life that was truly my own. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The day I went to collect my things from Ethan's house was the hardest day of my life. Every object I packed was a memory, a reminder of the future we'd planned together. As I folded my clothes into boxes, I heard the front door open. "Liv?" Ethan's voice called out, tinged with desperation. "Are you here?" I steeled myself, taking a deep breath before responding. "In the bedroom." He appeared in the doorway, his eyes red-rimmed and pleading. "Please, don't do this. We can work it out. I'll tell Mom she can't move in. I'll do whatever you want." I shook my head, continuing to pack. "It's too late, Ethan. This isn't just about your mother anymore. It's about trust, about building a life together. You've shown me where your priorities lie." "But I love you," he insisted, moving closer. I stepped back, maintaining the distance between us. Sometimes love isn't enough. Just then we heard another voice, Martha's. "Ethan? Olivia? Are you home?" My blood ran cold. Of course she would be here now. Ethan looked panicked, caught between his mother and me once again. Martha bustled into the room, her eyes widening at the sight of my packed boxes. "What's going on here?" "I'm leaving, Martha," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Ethan and I are separating." Martha gasped dramatically. "Separating? But why? Ethan, what have you done?" I watched as Ethan crumbled under his mother's accusatory glare. I didn't, Mom, please." In that moment, seeing Ethan revert to a chastised child in front of his mother, any lingering doubt I had about my decision vanished. "This isn't Ethan's fault, Martha," I said, surprising myself with my calmness. "It's ours. We want different things from life, and it's time we both accepted that." Martha's face hardened. "Nonsense. You're just being selfish, Olivia. Ethan needs his family. He needs me." "No, Mom," Ethan finally spoke up, his voice shaky but determined. "Liv's right. I've been trying to please everyone, and in the process, I've hurt the person I love most." For a fleeting moment, hope flickered in my chest. Was Ethan finally standing up to his mother? But Martha wasn't done. "Ethan, darling, you're confused. Let's sit down and talk about this. I'm sure we can find a solution that works for everyone." I watched as Ethan's resolve wavered, his eyes darting between his mother and me. In that moment I knew that no matter what he said now, nothing had really changed. The pattern would continue, with Martha manipulating, Ethan capitulating, and me being pushed aside. "There's nothing to discuss," I said firmly, zipping up my last suitcase. "I've made my decision." "Liv, please," Ethan begged, reaching for my hand. I pulled away, the finality of my actions hitting me like a physical blow. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I truly am. But I can't live like this anymore. I deserve better. We both do." As I walked out of the bedroom, carrying my bags, I heard Martha's voice behind me. "Let her go, Ethan. She clearly doesn't understand the importance of family." I paused at the front door, turning back one last time. Ethan stood there, torn between following me and comforting his mother. The sight broke my heart all over again. "Goodbye, Ethan," I said softly. "I hope you find happiness." With that, I walked out, closing the door on my marriage and the life I thought I would have. As I loaded my car, my hands shaking and tears streaming down my face, I felt a mix of grief and relief wash over me. Sitting in the driver's seat, I took a moment to collect myself. My phone buzzed, a text from my best friend Sarah. "Are you okay? Do you need me to come over?" I stared at the message, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of what I'd just done. I was alone. Truly alone for the first time in years. The thought was terrifying, but also exhilarating. With trembling fingers, I typed out a response. "I'm not okay, but I will be. Can we meet for coffee? I think I need to talk." As I hit send and started the car, I realized something. This wasn't just an ending. It was also a beginning, a chance to rediscover who I was without Ethan, without Martha's influence. A chance to build a life that was truly my own. Taking a deep breath, I pulled away from the curb, leaving behind the house that was never really a home. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it, on my own terms. 6 months after the divorce, I was finally starting to feel like myself again. I'd moved into a cozy apartment, thrown myself into my work, and even started dating again. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Then on a crisp autumn morning, my phone rang. It was my father. "Olivia," he said, his voice grave. "I thought you should know. I had to let Ethan go from the company." My heart sank. Despite everything, I still cared about Ethan's well-being. "What happened?" Dad sighed. "He mishandled some sensitive client information. It was a major breach of company policy. I had no choice." I thanked him for letting me know and hung up, my mind reeling. I knew how much that job meant to Ethan. It was his lifeline after our divorce. Later that afternoon, as I was leaving my office, I saw a familiar figure waiting by my car. Ethan looked terrible, disheveled, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes. Liv, he said, his voice cracking. I didn't know where else to go. I approached cautiously. Ethan, what are you doing here? I lost my job, he blurted out. Your dad, he fired me. I don't know what to do. Mom's been difficult. She keeps saying I should fight the dismissal, that your dad only fired me to hurt her. I need your help, Liv. Please. For a moment, I felt a surge of sympathy. This was the man I'd loved, the man I'd planned to spend my life with. But then I remembered all the broken promises, all the times he'd chosen his mother over me. I'm sorry, Ethan, I said, my voice firm but kind. But I can't help you. This is something you need to figure out on your own. His face crumpled. But Liv, I have nowhere else to turn. You're the only one who understands. You're the only one who can help me stand up to Mom. I shook my head. No, Ethan, that's not my job anymore. It never should have been. You need to learn to stand on your own 2 feet. But I love you, he whispered, reaching for my hand. I stepped back, and I loved you. But love isn't enough when there's no trust, no partnership. You made your choice, Ethan. Now you have to live with it. As I got into my car, I saw Ethan's defeated form in my rearview mirror. It broke my heart, but I knew I was doing the right thing, for both of us. That evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on how much my life had changed. A year ago, I would have done anything to help Ethan, to fix his problems. But now I realized that by always being his safety net, I'd been enabling his dependence on others. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Girls' night still on for tomorrow? I smiled, typing back a quick, absolutely. As I set my phone down, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I'd lost the future I thought I wanted, but I'd gained something far more valuable: independence, self-respect, and the courage to put myself first. I thought about all the women out there who might be struggling like I had, torn between their own needs and the demands of others. If I could tell them one thing, it would be this: your life is your own. Don't let anyone, not a partner, not a parent, not society, make you feel like you have to sacrifice your happiness for theirs. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. As I got ready for work, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me was stronger, wiser, and more confident than she'd ever been. I picked up my phone and opened my social media app. After a moment's hesitation, I began to type, to all the women out there feeling trapped or silenced: your voice matters. Your dreams matter. You matter. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, to demand respect, to walk away from situations that diminish you. It's not easy, but I promise you, it's worth it. You are worth it. As I hit post, I felt a surge of empowerment. This was my story, but it didn't have to be unique. If my experience could help even one woman find the strength to take control of her life, then every tear, every heartache would have been worth it. I grabbed my keys and headed out the door, ready to face whatever the day might bring. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what it held, because whatever came next, I knew I had the strength to handle it. On my own terms, in my own way, and that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.